Welcome to a journey through time and intrigue. Tonight, we will unravel the hidden secrets of a city like no other, Venice. A city of unparalleled beauty, its canals, bridges, and majestic palaces tell a tale of grandeur, wealth, and power. But beneath the surface of this iconic city lies a darker, more complex history, a history steeped in crime, corruption, and the black market. In this story, we'll explore how Venice, founded on trade, grew to dominate the Mediterranean and became a center of political intrigue, economic power, and illegal dealings. From its humble beginnings on the marshy islands of the Venetian lagoon to its rise as a global economic empire, we will uncover the truth about the city's foundations, its criminal networks, corrupt leaders, and the dark undercurrents that shaped Venice's history. How did Venice, a city built on the water, rise to such heights, and what secrets were hidden within its canals and walls? In tonight's journey, we'll explore the city's early days, its rise to power, and the unseen forces that played a role in Venice's ascent. Before we dive deep into the mysteries of Venice's origins, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? What time is it where you are? It's always fascinating to see how far-reaching these tales go, so take a moment and drop a comment below. And if you're intrigued by the story of this incredible city, don't forget to like this video. So, now, let us step back in time, into a city built not just on trade and triumph, but on the unseen forces that shaped its very foundation. Venice's story begins in the early days, and as we explore the first 12 segments, we'll take a close look at its origins, rise to power, and the hidden secrets that lie beneath the surface. Our story begins over 1,500 years ago in the distant Venetian lagoon, a marshy region of mudflats and islands in the northern part of Italy. At first glance, this may not seem like the place where one of the most powerful and luxurious cities in the world would emerge. Yet, from these humble and treacherous beginnings, Venice was born, a city that would grow to dominate the Mediterranean for centuries. The foundation of Venice lies not in the traditional lands of great civilizations, but rather in a marshland, where people found refuge from the barbarians and the crumbling Western Roman Empire. As Rome's power waned in the 5th century, the once mighty empire faced external threats, primarily from the Huns, the Goths, and other Germanic tribes who had pushed into Italy. As the Western Roman Empire collapsed under the weight of these invasions, people from the mainland sought refuge in the Venetian lagoon, a remote and isolated area surrounded by saltwater and accessible only by boat. The lagoon's islands provided a natural defense against the invaders, and people began to settle in what would eventually become the heart of Venice. In the mid-400 CE, refugees from places like Padua, Aquileia, and Altino fled to these islands, seeking safety and a fresh start in the face of the empire's decline. The islands of Venice, at first small and uninhabited, became a refuge for those who refused to fall under the rule of foreign invaders. By the end of the 5th century, these islands would start to form the very beginnings of what would become Venetian society. Living in the Venetian lagoon was no easy task. The marshy environment, with its shallow waters and the constant threat of flooding, made life difficult. The early Venetians had to adapt to their environment, building wooden stilts and floating homes to keep above the rising waters. The early settlements were crude, basic, and surrounded by nature's dangers, but the people were resourceful. The people of early Venice had a fierce determination to survive, a trait that would serve them well in the centuries to come. They constructed canals to navigate their watery world, created dikes and levees to protect their land from the sea, and built small wooden piers that served as ports for fishing and trade. The Venetians were mariners from the start, familiar with the sea and dependent on it for their survival. Trade began to emerge as the next logical step for these early settlers. The Venetians, having established themselves in the lagoon, began to interact with neighboring communities along the mainland and even the Byzantine Empire. By the 7th century, Venice had become a key player in the trade networks of the Mediterranean. They traded in salt, fish, wool, and other essential goods, making their islands an important point of exchange for the wider world. As trade expanded, so did the need for better organization, governance, and leadership. The Venetian Republic, which would become a powerful political entity in the medieval era, began to take shape. Early in its development, Venice was governed by a series of tribal chiefs and elected leaders from the surrounding islands, but the first signs of a unified governance began to emerge as the city's wealth and influence grew. In 697 CE, the establishment of the Doge system marked a pivotal moment in Venice's transition from a collection of independent islands to a more unified and organized city-state. The Doge, elected as the chief magistrate, was to become the symbol of Venetian power. He would not only represent the city in foreign affairs but also preside over the emerging governmental structures of this growing republic. The first Doge, Paolo Lucio Anafesto, was elected in 697 CE after a period of chaos and infighting among the Venetian islands. This marks the birth of the Venetian Republic, which would continue to govern for over 1,000 years. The Doge's role was meant to bring stability, ensuring that no single island or faction could dominate the rest. Over time, the Doge became both a political figure and a symbol of unity and strength for Venice. But Venice's rise wasn't just about politics. It was about trade, specifically, its control over the Mediterranean trade routes. Venice began to leverage its strategic location between Europe and Asia, establishing itself as a central point for the export and import of goods such as spices, silk, and luxuries. The Byzantine Empire, at the time, relied heavily on Venetian ships to conduct trade between its territories and the rest of the world. The Venetians became known for their merchant fleets, their shipbuilding prowess, and their ability to navigate the complex political landscape of the Mediterranean. Their naval dominance made them indispensable to the Byzantine Empire, and over time, Venice's influence expanded into other regions, including parts of Italy, Greece, and even the Holy Land. By the 9th century, Venice had established itself as a maritime republic capable of challenging the dominance of other Mediterranean powers, such as Byzantium and the Islamic caliphates. The city's navy was formidable, and its merchant fleet controlled some of the most lucrative trade routes in the world. Venice's prosperity continued to grow throughout the Middle Ages. As its influence spread, the city became a magnet for traders, pilgrims, and scholars. It was during this period that the iconic St. Mark's Basilica was constructed, symbolizing both Venice's religious significance and its growing wealth. The basilica's opulent design and the golden mosaics it contained were meant to reflect the city's importance and its connection to Christianity and the Byzantine world. However, it wasn't just trade that made Venice rich, it was its ability to maintain an intricate network of alliances and rivalries with other Mediterranean powers. Venice engaged in both diplomacy and military conquests, often relying on its navy to maintain dominance over key trade routes and strategic locations. The Venetian people were masters of strategic politics, using their wealth and military strength to broker alliances that extended Venice's influence across the Mediterranean. By the 12th century, Venice had become a key player in European politics, particularly when it came to its relationship with the Holy Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, and the papacy. While Venice's rise to power was impressive, it wasn't without its dark side. With great wealth came the potential for great corruption. In Venice, the black market was thriving even in its earliest days. The city's status as a center for trade and commerce inevitably gave rise to illicit activities, such as smuggling, illegal trade, and bribery. As Venice's power grew, so did the opportunities for corruption. The ruling elite often found themselves involved in underground dealings, manipulating taxation systems, and creating black markets for luxury goods like silk, spices, and even slaves. The Venetian merchant class, while initially benefiting from the city's growing power, also became complicit in perpetuating a system of economic inequality and shadowy dealings. At the same time, the city's political structure, while seen as progressive by the standards of the day, was often manipulated by the wealthy elites. The Doge, despite being a symbol of unity, was often seen as a puppet of powerful families and merchant groups who used their influence to control the republic. Corruption at the highest levels of government was widespread, and the city's complex system of governmental checks and balances often worked to protect those in power rather than to ensure justice for the common people. Venice's journey from a small, marshy settlement to a global maritime power was one marked by survival, innovation, and ambition. The city's early settlers, driven by the need for protection from invaders, laid the foundations for a society that would thrive on trade and political savvy. Yet, Venice's rise was also fraught with dark undercurrents, from its economic inequality to the growing influence of crime and corruption. In the next segment, we will delve deeper into how Venice continued to expand, not only in terms of its physical territory but also in its political and economic reach, establishing itself as a force to be reckoned with in the Mediterranean world. As we journey deeper into the history of Venice, we come to a pivotal point, its rise as a true maritime republic and economic powerhouse. From its humble beginnings in the Venetian lagoon, this small city-state quickly expanded, asserting its dominance in the Mediterranean. By the 10th century, Venice was no longer just a refuge for survivors of the crumbling Roman Empire, it had transformed into a city of influence, a beacon of both trade and political maneuvering. In this segment, we'll trace the next chapter of Venice's evolution, its commercial empire, the rise of its navy, and the establishment of a political system designed to protect the city's wealth, trade routes, and power. At the same time, we'll see how the same ambition that fueled Venice's prosperity also laid the foundation for the corruption, crime, and illegal dealings that would persist for centuries. By the 10th century, Venice's position in the Venetian lagoon had made it the center of trade between the Byzantine Empire in the east and the growing powers of Western Europe. Situated on the waters of the Adriatic Sea, Venice's strategic location was crucial for controlling sea routes and facilitating commerce throughout the Mediterranean. The Venetians' mastery over naval trade allowed them to not only thrive economically but also build a powerful and highly capable naval fleet. The city's merchant fleet became one of the largest in Europe, and Venice's trading ships plied the waters of the Mediterranean, carrying spices, silk, gold, and luxury goods from the East and Africa to the growing markets of Western Europe. This growing maritime empire required a strong navy to protect the city's commercial interests. Venice's naval prowess was unmatched during the medieval period, and the Venetians used their ships not only for trade but also as instruments of military power. The city's fleet was crucial in maintaining control over vital trade routes, particularly between Italy, the Byzantine Empire, and the emerging Islamic states in North Africa. The most significant victory for Venice's fleet came in 1171 when the Venetians helped the Byzantine Empire secure victory over the Norman fleet in the Battle of Dyrrhachium. The victory established Venice as an unquestioned naval power, giving it the leverage to dominate the lucrative trade routes of the eastern Mediterranean. The Venetians also began to extend their influence into the Black Sea, making the city a key player in trade with the Byzantine Empire and the Kievan Rus. As Venice's wealth grew, so did its desire for more power and influence. The 13th century saw Venice begin to acquire more territories outside of the lagoon, establishing a Venetian empire that stretched from northern Italy to the eastern Mediterranean. The city used its powerful navy to take control of critical port cities and islands that gave it access to new markets and resources. The Fourth Crusade, 1202–1204, was a pivotal moment in Venice's imperial ambitions. Initially intended to reclaim the Holy Land, the Venetian crusaders found themselves embroiled in a dispute over the control of Zara, modern-day Zadar, a strategic city on the coast of the Adriatic. Eventually, the Venetians turned the Fourth Crusade into an opportunity for empire building, capturing Constantinople itself in 1204. The Latin Empire was established, and Venice gained a crucial foothold in the Byzantine East. Though Venice had made significant territorial gains, its expansion was primarily centered around its trade routes and the control of key ports. By the end of the 13th century, Venice controlled much of the Dalmatian coast, Greece, and the islands of the Aegean Sea. These territories were crucial in allowing Venice to monopolize trade and maintain its economic dominance over the Mediterranean. The establishment of Venetian colonies also helped the city strengthen its control over the silk trade, spice trade, and other luxury goods, creating a global network of economic power. The Venetian Empire, built on maritime supremacy, ensured that Venice would remain a dominant force in European politics for centuries. As Venice's power grew, its political system evolved to ensure stability and prevent any single entity from monopolizing power. The Doge, who had been elected as the head of state since the 9th century, remained a key figure in the governance of Venice. However, The role of the Doge was largely ceremonial, with the real power residing in the hands of the noble families who controlled the wealth and commerce of the city. The Venetian political system was unique in that it operated as a republic, a merchant oligarchy, where power was vested in the hands of a small group of wealthy families who governed through a system of checks and balances. The Great Council, composed of Venetian nobles, played a major role in the decision-making process, as did the Council of Ten, a secretive and powerful body that had the authority to carry out political purges and maintain order in the republic. Venice was governed by a complex and highly structured system designed to ensure that power did not fall into the hands of any one person or faction. The Doge was elected by the Great Council and served for life, but he had limited powers, especially when compared to the Council of Ten or other high-ranking officials. In practice, Venice was ruled by a handful of elite families, who controlled everything from trade policies to military strategy. This system, while ensuring stability for a time, also laid the groundwork for corruption. The Venetian elite often found themselves at odds, competing for wealth and power, and their manipulations of the political system led to backroom deals and bribery. The need for economic and political control gave rise to a shadow economy, which thrived alongside the republic's political institutions. Despite its outward appearance as a flourishing trade empire built on merchant prosperity, Venice's underworld was anything but pristine. The city's prosperity was built not just on legal trade but also on a complex network of black market dealings, corruption, and organized crime. The smuggling of goods was a common practice in Venice. Goods such as spices, silk, and luxury items were often smuggled in through the city's vast network of canals and hidden docks. The Venetian government, while officially promoting legal trade, turned a blind eye to the activities of merchants who paid for the privilege of avoiding taxes and customs duties. This allowed a thriving black market to exist just beneath the surface of the republic's economy. Moreover, the crime syndicates operating in Venice were adept at exploiting the city's complex legal system. The noble families who governed the city often had their own private armies of mercenaries, who were employed not only in warfare but also in extortion, protection rackets, and organized theft. The corruption at the highest levels of government ensured that these criminal activities were allowed to continue unimpeded, creating a parallel economy that worked in the shadows. This dual economy, one of official trade and one of criminal activity, became a hallmark of Venetian life. While the city's merchant fleets sailed the Mediterranean, transporting luxurious goods for the elites of Europe, the black market was just as active, smuggling and trading goods that had been stolen or circumvented the legal system. As Venice grew from a collection of isolated islands into a dominant Mediterranean empire, its economic foundations were built on trade, naval power, and the ability to manipulate both political and economic systems. While the city's legal trade flourished, so too did its criminal underworld, creating a complex duality that would continue throughout its history. The Venetian Republic was a marvel of political ingenuity, blending republican governance with aristocratic control, ensuring that power remained in the hands of a small elite. However, the growing corruption and the thriving black market would eventually contribute to the decline of the city-state. As we continue in the next segment, we will explore how the rise of Venice's economic empire continued into the Renaissance, and how the city-state used both diplomacy and military force to further its influence across the Mediterranean. As we move forward in the history of Venice, we enter the Golden Age, an era marked by the city-state's unrivaled power, its economic dominance, and its cultural flourishing. By the 12th and 13th centuries, Venice had transformed from a small settlement in a marshy lagoon into a thriving empire, the envy of the Mediterranean world. Venice's navy was its backbone during this period, and its merchant fleet became the dominant force in the Mediterranean. The city's ability to control key ports, trade routes, and strategic islands ensured that it not only survived but thrived in a world of intense competition and conflict. But it was not just Venice's economic success that made it so powerful, it was its ability to combine diplomacy with military prowess, creating a political environment that allowed it to manipulate alliances and rivalries to its benefit. In this segment, we will dive into how Venice expanded its territorial holdings, cemented its place as a maritime superpower, and managed to play a central role in the politics of the Mediterranean. Along the way, we will uncover how the very nature of Venetian rule, driven by a unique political system, laid the foundations for both prosperity and corruption that would define the city for centuries to come. By the 13th century, Venice had established itself as the undisputed leader of Mediterranean trade. The Venetian mercantile empire stretched across the seas, with key trading posts in Constantinople, Alexandria, and Antioch, and as far west as the Balearic Islands and Sicily. The city's naval power allowed it to control vital maritime routes, ensuring that no other power could compete with its dominance. Venice's strategic geographic position on the Adriatic Sea made it the ideal hub for trade between the Byzantine Empire, Islamic territories, and the burgeoning kingdoms of Western Europe. As Venice's economy grew, so did its territorial ambitions. It was during this period that Venice began its systematic expansion beyond the city itself, establishing colonies, trading posts, and fortifications in key locations. One of Venice's most significant territorial acquisitions came in 1204, when the Fourth Crusade led to the sacking of Constantinople. Although the crusade was meant to reclaim Jerusalem, Venice managed to divert the expedition to its own advantage. With the Byzantine capital in disarray, Venice secured control over critical ports and islands, gaining territories in the eastern Mediterranean, including Crete, Cyprus, and Corfu. This expansion brought immense wealth to Venice, which capitalized on its new holdings to increase its dominance over trade routes. The city-state established a near monopoly over the spice trade, and its control over the eastern Mediterranean ensured that Venetian merchants had exclusive access to the markets of the Islamic world and Asia. At the core of Venice's rise to power was its naval fleet, one of the most powerful in the world. Venice's ability to maintain dominance over the Mediterranean Sea was rooted in its highly skilled navy and its innovative shipbuilding techniques. The Venetians were master shipbuilders, capable of constructing ships that were both fast and maneuverable, allowing them to dominate naval battles and protect their trade routes. The Venetian navy was not just a military force, it was an essential part of the city's economy. Venice's fleets carried goods from the east to the west and provided security for Venetian trade caravans. The galley, a type of ship powered by oars and sails, became the symbol of Venetian naval superiority. The dromons, large ships used by the Byzantine Empire, were also incorporated into Venetian designs, helping to establish the city's maritime dominance. The Battle of Lepanto in 1571 was a defining moment in the history of Venetian naval power. Although Venice was no longer at the peak of its influence, the battle, which saw a coalition fleet of Christian nations defeat the Ottoman Empire's fleet, marked a significant shift in the balance of power in the Mediterranean. Venice's role in this battle showed its continued importance in European affairs, despite the rise of the Ottoman Empire. However, by the 16th century, Ottoman naval power began to rival Venice's, and the city's once untouchable dominance began to wane. Still, Venice's naval fleet remained a formidable force, helping to protect its commercial interests and maintain its position in the Mediterranean world. Venice's political system was unique for its time. The Venetian Republic was ruled by the Doge, who was elected by the Great Council from the city's most powerful noble families. The Doge was both the head of state and the symbol of Venetian unity, but his powers were limited, and much of the decision-making was carried out by the Council of Ten and the Great Council. This system was designed to ensure that no single family or individual could control the entire city-state. Despite its appearance of democracy and inclusivity, Venice's political system was in reality an oligarchy, with the noble class holding nearly all political power. The wealthiest families dominated the Great Council, and the Doge's election was often determined by complex political maneuvering among the city's elite. While this system helped maintain political stability, it also fostered a climate of corruption, as the powerful families used their influence to control Venice's trade routes, taxes, and economic policies. The Council of Ten, a secretive body created in the late 14th century, had significant power, including overseeing espionage and secret police. It was responsible for maintaining the public order and rooting out dissent, but its power also allowed it to engage in covert operations that suppressed the interests of rival factions. Political corruption and backroom deals were common, as Venetian aristocrats used their influence to secure business interests and maintain their power within the city-state. By the 14th and 15th centuries, Venice's wealth was unparalleled. The city was a major center for international trade, particularly in luxury goods such as spices, silk, jewels, and textiles. The city-state's wealthy merchant class, made up of families like the Barbari, the Cavalli, and the Contarini, dominated the economy and controlled trade networks that stretched from the Byzantine Empire to North Africa and even as far as the Indian Ocean. Venetian merchants, known for their shrewd business practices, controlled a vast trading network that spanned multiple continents. The city's wealth was not just built on trade but on banking and finance, as Venetian banks provided loans and credit to merchants, rulers, and religious institutions across Europe. The mercantile aristocracy became the foundation of Venice's social structure, and as their wealth grew, so did their political influence. The city's ruling elite used their economic power to control Venetian politics, ensuring that their interests were always prioritized. The constant flow of wealth into the city allowed Venice to become a cultural hub as well, attracting artists, architects, and scholars who were drawn to its economic prosperity. Despite Venice's outward appearance of prosperity and order, the city's wealth and power were not built entirely on legitimate trade. As Venice expanded its economic empire, a shadow economy also flourished. Corruption and crime were deeply embedded in the political system, and the black market became a crucial part of the city's economy. The city's official markets were heavily regulated by the Venetian government, but smuggling, bribery, and illegal trade were rampant. Goods such as spices, slaves, and luxuries were often traded outside of official channels, and the aristocratic families who controlled the city were often involved in these underground dealings. Venetian crime syndicates operated with relative impunity, engaging in extortion, theft, and forgery. The city's secret police kept a tight grip on the populace, but they were often just as corrupt as the criminals they sought to root out. Venice's system of espionage, while ensuring stability, also enabled the elite to maintain their privileged position through dirty dealings. By the end of the 15th century, Venice had reached the height of its power. It was a dominant maritime republic, with an empire stretching across the Mediterranean, from Cyprus to the Dalmatian coast, and a major player in the global economy. Its naval power, wealth, and political influence were unmatched, but this golden era was built on a complex and often corrupt system of governance. As we continue in the next segment, we will delve into the decline of Venice, how the city's prosperity slowly turned to decay, and how its internal corruption, external conflicts, and the rise of new global powers ultimately led to its fall. The Golden Age was just a fleeting moment in the life of a city-state that would soon face the inevitable forces of history. Venice, once a beacon of wealth, power, and cultural significance, stood at the peak of its influence for centuries. But as time wore on, cracks began to form in the very foundation that had sustained its empire. By the 16th century, Venice, though still a powerful force in the Mediterranean, began to face challenges from both internal decay and external pressures that ultimately led to its fall. In this segment, we'll explore the decline of Venice, starting with its economic difficulties, the military defeats it suffered, and the changing global balance of power. We will examine how the rise of new trade routes, the growing dominance of other European powers, and Venice's internal corruption contributed to the city-state's gradual collapse. At its height, Venice's wealth was primarily built on control of Mediterranean trade routes and its monopoly on luxury goods like spices, silk, and precious metals. The Venetian fleet dominated the sea routes, and Venice's location made it the prime middleman between the Byzantine Empire, Islamic states, and Western Europe. However, as the age of exploration dawned in the late 15th and early 16th centuries, the discovery of new sea routes by Portugal and Spain began to chip away at Venice's monopoly. The Portuguese and Spanish explorers, led by figures like Vasco da Gama and Christopher Columbus, opened up direct trade routes to India, Africa, and the Americas, bypassing Venice's control of the traditional Mediterranean passageways. Venice, which had long relied on its position as the central hub of Mediterranean trade, was suddenly at a disadvantage. As new trade routes emerged, the Ottoman Empire, once a close ally and trade partner, began to exert more control over the eastern Mediterranean, further eroding Venice's power. The discovery of the Americas by Columbus in 1492 shifted the economic power of Europe away from Venice and toward the Atlantic states, particularly Spain, Portugal, and, later, the Netherlands and England. These new maritime powers began to dominate the flow of goods from Asia, the New World, and Africa, leaving Venice to grapple with the loss of its once uncontested position. As a result, Venice found itself struggling to adapt. Its shipping industry, long the city's greatest asset, began to lose its competitiveness. The Venetian merchant fleet was no longer the most advanced in the world, and its once vibrant economy began to stagnate. The city's wealth, so long fueled by trade, was slowly diminishing. The Ottoman Empire's rise as a powerful force in the Mediterranean marked the first major military challenge to Venice's dominance. Beginning in the 15th century, the Ottomans began to expand their influence across the Balkans and into North Africa, threatening Venice's trade routes and territorial holdings in the eastern Mediterranean. Venice had relied on its navy to maintain control over the Mediterranean, but by the 16th century, the Ottoman fleet was becoming increasingly formidable. The Battle of Lepanto in 1571, a pivotal naval clash between the Ottoman Empire and a Christian alliance, marked the beginning of the end for Venetian naval supremacy. While the Holy League, led by Spain, achieved a major victory at Lepanto, Venice lost much of its influence over eastern Mediterranean waters. The loss of Venetian territories like Cyprus and Crete to the Ottomans in the late 16th century further weakened the city's military position. Venice could no longer count on its naval dominance to protect its trade routes, and the city's ability to defend its holdings in the Aegean Sea and North Africa was severely diminished. As the Ottoman Empire tightened its grip on the eastern Mediterranean, Venice struggled to maintain control over its colonies and its commerce. The city's once powerful naval fleet was no match for the Ottomans, whose ships were more advanced and better funded. The shift in power away from Venice and toward the Ottoman and Atlantic empires became a significant turning point in the city's history. While external forces certainly contributed to Venice's decline, internal factors also played a major role. Venice's political system, despite its early successes, began to show signs of corruption and inefficiency. The Venetian oligarchy, which had once been a model of republicanism, became increasingly disconnected from the needs of the general population. The Doge, though still a symbol of power, had limited authority, and much of the political power rested in the hands of the aristocratic families who controlled the city. Over time, these families became more concerned with maintaining their wealth and status than with the welfare of the city. As a result, political infighting, corruption, and nepotism became common, further weakening the republic. The Council of Ten, once an effective governing body, became increasingly despotic, using its power to control dissent and suppress opposition. Political rivalries between the noble families often led to backroom deals, bribery, and scandals, leading to a deterioration of trust in the government. The city's economic policies became less effective, and the republic's ability to adapt to changing political and economic realities was severely limited. As the republic entered the 17th century, the same political system that had once fostered Venice's growth was now one of the main factors contributing to its decline. Venice's naval fleet had been the cornerstone of its power and prestige. But as we move into the 17th century, the decline of Venice's navy becomes increasingly evident. The naval arms race that characterized the 16th century had left the Venetians with an aging fleet, and the rise of the Ottoman navy and the growing dominance of European powers on the Atlantic diminished Venice's influence over the Mediterranean. The city's fortunes in naval warfare continued to falter, especially in battles against the Ottomans and later in conflicts with other European powers. By the mid-17th century, Venice's once legendary fleet was no longer a dominant force. Its inability to maintain naval supremacy was emblematic of the larger challenges facing the city-state. The decline of Venice's military might mirror its economic difficulties. The once great mercantile empire that had enriched Venice now seemed vulnerable, as new powers arose to challenge its dominance. The wars against the Ottomans, coupled with the economic shifts brought on by the Atlantic trade, signaled the end of an era for Venice. By the time Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power in France in the late 18th century, Venice's decline was all but inevitable. The French Revolution and the subsequent Napoleonic Wars marked the final chapter in the history of the Venetian Republic. In 1797, Napoleon's forces marched into Venice, effectively ending the Republic's existence. The Treaty of Campo Formio forced Venice to cede its territories to Austria, bringing an end to over 1,000 years of independent rule. The city that had once been a beacon of economic power, cultural significance, and naval might was now reduced to a small part of the Austrian Empire. Napoleon's invasion was not just a military defeat, it was the culmination of centuries of political instability, economic decline, and external pressures that had slowly eroded Venice's power. With the rise of the nation-state, Venice's system of oligarchic rule could no longer compete with the centralized powers of Europe. The decline of Venice was a slow and painful process, marked by the gradual erosion of its political, economic, and military strength. Once a mighty maritime empire, Venice struggled to maintain its dominance in an ever-changing world. The rise of the Ottoman Empire, the discovery of new trade routes, and the internal corruption of its political system all contributed to the city's eventual downfall. Despite these challenges, Venice's legacy lives on. The city's architecture, art, and cultural influence continue to inspire awe and admiration, and its history serves as a reminder of how even the greatest of empires can eventually succumb to the forces of history, economics, and politics. As we stand at the crossroads of Venice's glorious past and its place in the modern world, we realize that despite the city's fall as a maritime empire, its legacy is far from diminished. In fact, Venice's cultural, architectural, and artistic influence continues to inspire awe and admiration to this day. From the Grand Canal to the Piazza San Marco, from the masterpieces of Titian, Tintoretto, and Veronese, to the Venetian Renaissance and Byzantine mosaics, Venice has shaped the very fabric of European art, architecture, and culture. But how did a once mighty empire, with its sprawling colonies, powerful navy, and dominant trade routes, transform into a city that now relies heavily on tourism and cultural preservation? How did Venice adapt to the modern era, where its political influence waned, yet its cultural significance grew? In this segment, we will explore how Venice's past continues to shape its present and future. From Napoleon's conquest to its decline in power, and its eventual status as a global cultural icon, we will examine how this ancient city has reinvented itself as a world treasure and tourist haven. After the fall of the Venetian Republic in 1797, Venice's role as a political and economic powerhouse came to an end. The city was subjected to foreign rule, first under the French, then the Austrians, before finally becoming part of a newly unified Italy in the mid-19th century. The transition from a bustling maritime empire to a relatively small part of the Austrian Empire, and later, an Italian kingdom, marked a turning point for Venice, which had been accustomed to centuries of independent rule. In the decades following its incorporation into Italy, Venice faced significant economic decline. Its once thriving mercantile trade began to falter as industrialization took root elsewhere in Italy. Venice's economic model, which had relied on its shipping industry, naval power, and colonial possessions, became increasingly outdated in a rapidly changing world. New ports in Genoa and Naples, as well as the rise of Atlantic trade routes, made Venice's strategic position less relevant. However, the loss of Venice's empire did not lead to the city's demise. In fact, the absence of a militaristic focus opened the door for a new era of cultural flourishing. Venice began to reinvent itself, shifting from a political and military capital to a city defined by its art, architecture, and cultural heritage. By the mid-19th century, it was clear that Venice would no longer thrive through trade and military conquest. Instead, it would flourish as a cultural gem, attracting artists, writers, and tourists from across Europe and beyond. By the 19th century, Venice had become a symbol of Romanticism. Artists and writers, captivated by its romantic allure and fading grandeur, began to flock to the city. Venice's decaying beauty, with its crumbling palaces, grand canals, and labyrinthine streets, became a metaphor for nostalgia and transience. Lord Byron, the famous English poet, was one of the first to elevate Venice to the status of a romantic symbol in the popular imagination. He famously wrote about the city's mystique and decay, using its Gothic and melancholic atmosphere to inspire his poetic works. Venice's dramatic history, combined with its unique location, captured the imagination of artists, poets, and philosophers throughout the Romantic era. John Ruskin, an English writer and art critic, visited Venice in the 19th century and was so taken by its beauty that he dedicated much of his career to studying and writing about the city. His work, particularly in the Stones of Venice, celebrated the city's architecture and its Byzantine and Gothic styles. Ruskin's writings were instrumental in turning Venice into an artistic destination for future generations of travelers. Venice also became a focal point for Italian painters such as Canaletto, whose landscapes immortalized the city's canals and architecture, and Giovanni Bellini, whose works contributed to the city's rich artistic heritage. These artists and many others turned Venice into a living canvas, showcasing its grandeur and beauty for the world to see. In the 20th century, Venice's transformation into a cultural icon reached new heights. The tourism boom that began in the late 19th and early 20th centuries solidified Venice's status as one of the most visited cities in the world. Venice's appeal was multifaceted: its historic architecture, its romantic gondola rides, its world-renowned art museums and churches, and its position as the heart of the Venetian Renaissance made it a must-see destination for travelers seeking culture, history, and beauty. By the mid-20th century, Venice had become synonymous with luxury tourism. The Café Florian, located in Piazza San Marco, became a meeting point for intellectuals, writers, and artists, further cementing the city's status as a center of elite culture. As the world's wealthiest individuals traveled to Venice, the city's canals and narrow streets became a playground for the rich and famous, eager to experience the magic of this once mighty republic. Venice's role as a cultural hub only deepened as the city began to host a variety of cultural events, including the Venice Film Festival, founded in 1932, which became one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. The Biennale exhibition, another cultural landmark, continued to attract international artists and performers, making Venice an essential stop on the global art circuit. Despite the growing number of visitors, Venice retained its position as a symbol of artistic beauty and historical significance. The city's famous landmarks, such as the Piazza San Marco, the Doge's Palace, and the Bridge of Sighs, continue to captivate the imaginations of millions. As we move into the 21st century, Venice faces new challenges. While it remains one of the most visited cities in the world, the sheer number of tourists has begun to put immense strain on the city's infrastructure and environment. The fragile ecosystem of the Venetian lagoon, already threatened by rising sea levels and climate change, is further endangered by the constant influx of millions of visitors each year. The issue of mass tourism has become a growing concern, with many Venetians questioning whether the city's economic dependence on tourism is worth the environmental and cultural cost. Local residents, once the heart of Venice, have been gradually displaced by rising property prices, caused by the demand for luxury rentals and Airbnb-style accommodations. Many Venetians have been forced to move out of the city center, leaving behind a growing empty city, where the rhythm of daily life is being replaced by the rush of tourists. At the same time, efforts to preserve Venice's cultural heritage are ongoing. The city has taken significant steps to protect its historic architecture, including the restoration of churches, palaces, and museums. International initiatives have focused on protecting the city from the effects of climate change, particularly through the MOSE project, designed to prevent flooding and protect the city's foundations. Venice's future as a cultural icon depends on balancing the needs of tourism, preservation, and sustainability. As the city adapts to the demands of the modern world, its historical significance and artistic beauty will continue to inspire generations to come. Though Venice's political and economic power has long since faded, its legacy remains indelible. From a maritime empire to a center of culture and tourism, the city continues to be a living testament to the art, architecture, and ingenuity of human civilization. Venice's legacy transcends time, reminding us of the fragility of power and the enduring nature of cultural heritage. As we reflect on Venice's journey from empire to icon, we see a city that has endured centuries of change, yet continues to captivate the world with its mystique, beauty, and resilience. Though it may no longer rule the seas, Venice remains an eternal symbol of the triumphs and tragedies of history. As we move into the 21st century, Venice, once a maritime empire and cultural icon, finds itself facing a new set of challenges. Though the city's past as a great trading hub and naval power has long passed, its legacy remains one of unparalleled beauty and historical significance. But now, Venice must contend with an entirely different kind of pressure, one born from the very qualities that made it so remarkable. The city, more than ever, has become a tourist magnet, drawing millions from around the world who seek to experience its iconic canals, Renaissance art and Gothic architecture. Yet, the influx of visitors has brought with it serious concerns about the preservation of Venice's fragile environment and historical structures. The very things that make Venice a global treasure are the same things that make it vulnerable. In this segment, we will explore the modern challenges facing Venice, how it has become a tourism-driven economy, the environmental threats that jeopardize its future, and the ongoing efforts to preserve its cultural and architectural heritage. We'll examine how Venice is striving to adapt to the demands of the modern world, while staying true to its rich legacy. In recent decades, Venice has seen a dramatic increase in tourism. Once a relatively quiet city, it is now one of the most visited destinations in the world, with millions of tourists arriving every year to walk the cobbled streets, ride the famous gondolas, and marvel at landmarks like St. Mark's Basilica, the Doge's Palace, and the Grand Canal. By the 21st century, tourism became the backbone of the city's economy. Visitors flocked to Venice for its art, architecture, and rich history. The city's economic survival has become closely tied to the tourist industry, with shops, hotels, and restaurants catering to the global visitors who seek to experience its romanticized image. However, the mass influx of tourists has led to a number of serious problems. Venice now faces the dual challenge of maintaining its economic vitality while also protecting its cultural heritage and local way of life. The balance between preservation and economic growth has become increasingly difficult to manage. Tourism in Venice often peaks during the summer months, with over 30 million visitors each year. The Venetian government has implemented various measures to address the issue, including daily visitor quotas, tourist taxes, and plans to limit cruise ship arrivals. But despite these efforts, the overwhelming number of visitors has left the city struggling with issues such as overcrowding, environmental damage, and the displacement of local residents. One of the most significant impacts of mass tourism on Venice is the displacement of local residents. As property prices skyrocket and the demand for short-term rentals increases, many Venetians are forced to leave their homes. The historic city center, once a vibrant community of locals, is now increasingly dominated by visitors. Residents find it more difficult to find affordable housing, and many have moved to the mainland in search of more affordable living conditions. This gentrification of Venice has led to a decline in the local population. Venice's historic neighborhoods, which once thrived with artisan workshops, family-owned shops, and local markets, are now increasingly populated by tourist-focused businesses. The soul of the city, its local culture, is gradually being replaced by the demands of mass tourism. As the population of Venice shrinks, so does its sense of community. The city's local traditions and way of life are at risk of being lost, as the Venetian identity becomes overshadowed by the tourism industry. The growing touristification of Venice threatens to turn the city into little more than a theme park, losing the very essence that made it special in the first place. The most pressing challenge Venice faces today is the environmental crisis caused by its unique geographical position in the Venetian lagoon. Venice was built on a series of small islands and mudflats, and its foundations rest on a delicate balance of water and land. Over the centuries, the city has faced flooding, erosion, and the gradual sinking of its foundations. Yet the modern threats to Venice are more immediate than ever. Rising sea levels, climate change, and frequent flooding have become serious threats to the preservation of the city. Venice experiences acqua alta, high water, several times a year, with tides that can inundate the Piazza San Marco and other parts of the city. These floods have caused significant damage to historical buildings, museums, and the fragile foundations of the city's canals. In response to these threats, the MOSE project, Modular Protection System for the Lagoon, was launched in the early 2000s. This ambitious engineering project aims to protect Venice from the rising tides by constructing a series of barriers that can be raised to protect the city's waterways during periods of high water. While the project promises to be a long-term solution to Venice's flooding problem, it has also been criticized for its cost, its impact on the environment, and its potential to disrupt the delicate balance of the lagoon's ecosystem. Despite these challenges, the MOSE project is seen as crucial for the survival of Venice in the face of climate change. However, it remains to be seen whether it will be enough to stem the tide of rising waters and the ongoing environmental decay that threatens the city. Beyond the environmental and economic challenges, Venice also faces the immense task of preserving its cultural heritage. The city is home to some of the world's most significant artistic and architectural treasures, including works by Titian, Veronese, and Tintoretto, as well as iconic structures like St. Mark's Basilica and the Doge's Palace. However, the preservation of these priceless landmarks is becoming increasingly difficult. Air pollution, humidity, and the growing threat of flooding have all contributed to the deterioration of Venice's historical buildings. Efforts to restore and maintain the city's monuments are ongoing, but these tasks are both expensive and time-consuming. The Venetian government has worked closely with international organizations, museums, and cultural institutions to fund restoration efforts and promote the conservation of its heritage. However, as the city's resources become increasingly strained by the demands of tourism, cultural preservation often takes a back seat. In response to these challenges, UNESCO has declared Venice a World Heritage Site, placing international pressure on governments to prioritize the preservation of the city's architectural and cultural landmarks. Local organizations, including the Venetian Heritage Foundation, have also been instrumental in raising awareness about the need to protect the city from both the threats of modernization and environmental decay. Despite its challenges, Venice has proven itself to be a city that can adapt. The 21st century has brought new solutions to the city's most pressing problems, from sustainable tourism initiatives to cutting-edge environmental technologies. In recent years, Venice has embraced its identity as a global cultural hub, while also striving to balance modernization with preservation. In terms of tourism, Venice has been experimenting with new approaches to limit the impact of mass tourism. Tourism quotas, limits on cruise ships, and restrictions on large tour groups have been implemented to ensure that the city's historic neighborhoods are not overwhelmed by visitors. Efforts are also underway to encourage sustainable tourism that promotes responsible travel, focusing on reducing the environmental footprint of tourists while allowing them to experience the city's cultural and historical landmarks. Venice's role as a cultural center has also flourished in recent years, with a continued focus on the arts and creativity. The Biennale has grown to become a major international event, attracting artists, curators, and art lovers from around the globe. The Venice Film Festival, one of the oldest and most prestigious film festivals, continues to celebrate the best in global cinema, while institutions like the Peggy Guggenheim Collection and the Museo Correr provide platforms for artistic exchange and innovation. Venice stands at a critical juncture in its long and storied history. The city's cultural richness and historical significance are undeniable, but its future depends on its ability to adapt to the challenges of the modern era. Mass tourism, climate change, and urbanization threaten the delicate balance between preservation and progress. Despite these challenges, Venice has shown resilience. With its commitment to sustainability, cultural preservation, and tourism reform, the city can continue to thrive as a beacon of art, history, and innovation. The MOSE project and efforts to control tourism are just the beginning of the city's adaptation to the changing world. As Venice moves forward, it will continue to serve as a reminder of the delicate relationship between history, culture, and modernity, proving that even in the face of crisis, the spirit of Venice endures. As we enter the 21st century, Venice finds itself at the crossroads of history and modernity. The city, once the center of the Mediterranean world, with its vast network of trade routes and maritime supremacy, is now confronting a new set of challenges, ones that no empire or republic could have predicted. Today, Venice's position as a cultural capital is unrivaled. Its unique architecture, artistic heritage, and storied history continue to make it a city of unparalleled beauty and significance. However, despite the preservation of its cultural and historical landmarks, Venice is grappling with the immense pressure of mass tourism, the looming threat of climate change, and the challenge of balancing the demands of modern development with the need to protect its fragile environment and heritage. In this segment, we will examine the key issues that Venice faces in the 21st century, its ongoing efforts to adapt to these new realities, and the city's future prospects in a rapidly changing world. From environmental crises to economic struggles and social challenges, we'll explore how Venice is striving to preserve its unique identity while also facing the challenges of the modern world. In the 21st century, tourism has become the lifeblood of Venice's economy. The city receives millions of visitors each year, drawn by its iconic canals, Renaissance art, and the timeless beauty of its historic landmarks. However, with this influx of tourists comes a host of problems that threaten the fabric of the city and its local communities. Mass tourism is now a critical issue for Venice. The city's infrastructure, once designed for a much smaller population, has struggled to keep up with the demands of millions of tourists. The narrow streets, historic bridges, and ancient buildings were not built to accommodate the constant stream of visitors that flood the city each year. The number of tourists visiting Venice has skyrocketed, reaching approximately 30 million visitors annually in recent years. During peak seasons, the city's streets are often overcrowded, making it difficult for locals to go about their daily lives. The historic city center, once home to a vibrant community of Venetians, has become increasingly dominated by tourist-focused businesses, such as gift shops, high-end boutiques, and restaurants catering to foreign visitors. This touristification of Venice has led to the gentrification of many of the city's historic neighborhoods. The rise of luxury rentals, such as those offered by platforms like Airbnb, has driven up housing prices, forcing many local residents to leave. What was once a community of artisans, shopkeepers, and fishermen is now increasingly occupied by short-term rentals, leaving the city's local culture in jeopardy. Among the most pressing challenges Venice faces today is the threat of climate change. Venice is a low-lying city built on islands in the Venetian lagoon, and its very existence is tied to the delicate balance between the city's foundations and the rising waters of the Adriatic Sea. Venice has been sinking for centuries, a phenomenon that has been exacerbated by human activity, such as the extraction of groundwater in the 20th century. This process caused the city to sink by about 23 centimeters between 1900 and 1970. However, the biggest threat to Venice now comes from global warming and the rising sea levels associated with it. In recent years, the city has experienced an increase in flooding, with more frequent and severe acqua alta, high water, events that cause major damage to historical buildings, canals, and the city's infrastructure. One of the most iconic images of Venice is its famous Piazza San Marco, which, during high tides, often becomes submerged in water. In some instances, the city has seen water levels rise by over 1 meter, causing significant damage to the city's art treasures, architecture, and public spaces. To address these challenges, the city has turned to the MOSE project, an ambitious engineering scheme designed to protect Venice from flooding. The project involves the construction of movable barriers at the entrances to the lagoon, which can be raised during high tides to prevent water from flooding the city. While the project has faced delays and controversies, it remains a critical component of Venice's strategy to protect itself from the environmental threats posed by climate change. However, the MOSE project is not a permanent solution. Many experts believe that, while it will help to alleviate the effects of flooding in the short term, it may not be enough to protect Venice in the long run. The increasing frequency and severity of high water events, combined with the ongoing subsidence of the city, mean that Venice's future is still very much in question. Another challenge Venice faces in the modern era is the delicate task of preserving its cultural heritage. As a city with more than 1,500 years of history, Venice is home to some of the world's most significant art and architectural treasures. From the mosaics of St. Mark's Basilica to the works of Titian, Veronese, and Tintoretto, the city boasts an unparalleled collection of cultural and artistic heritage. However, the constant threat of climate change and pollution, combined with the pressures of mass tourism, has placed significant strain on Venice's historic buildings and art collections. The rising waters of the Adriatic Sea threaten to erode Venice's foundations, while air pollution and traffic congestion have made it difficult to maintain the city's delicate balance between preservation and modernity. Efforts to restore and maintain Venice's iconic buildings and artworks have been ongoing for decades, but the task is immense. The costs of restoration are high, and the challenges are compounded by the city's sinking foundations and the deterioration of building materials. In many cases, masonry and frescoes are irreparably damaged by the forces of nature, making it difficult to preserve the city's architectural integrity. International organizations, such as UNESCO, have made Venice a World Heritage Site, and Venetian authorities have implemented a number of measures to protect the city's cultural treasures. Yet the ongoing challenge of maintaining the city's unique identity while addressing the realities of modern life continues to be a source of debate. Given the challenges posed by mass tourism, the Venetian government has increasingly focused on sustainable tourism as a means of balancing the economic benefits of tourism with the city's need to preserve its heritage and environment. The city has begun to implement measures such as tourist quotas, entry fees, and regulations on cruise ships to limit the negative impact of tourism on Venice's fragile infrastructure. One of the most significant steps in this direction has been the ban on large cruise ships entering the Venetian lagoon, which had long been a source of concern due to the damage caused by their sheer size and weight. Venice's government has also considered implementing a tourist tax, which would help fund conservation efforts and mitigate the environmental impact of the tourism industry. While these efforts are a step in the right direction, Venice still faces the immense challenge of finding the right balance between preserving its cultural heritage and ensuring that the tourism industry remains sustainable in the long term. The city's future depends on finding innovative solutions that promote sustainability, reduce the environmental impact of tourism, and preserve the Venetian way of life for future generations. As Venice faces the challenges of the 21st century, its future remains uncertain. The city has long been a symbol of art, culture, and resilience, but it must now adapt to a rapidly changing world. The pressures of mass tourism, climate change, and environmental degradation threaten the delicate balance that has allowed Venice to survive for over 1,000 years. Yet, despite these challenges, there is hope. Venice's unique identity and cultural significance continue to inspire people from around the world. The city's commitment to sustainability, preservation, and innovation offers a pathway forward. By embracing the lessons of its past and adapting to the realities of the present, Venice can continue to be a beacon of cultural heritage and global influence in the years to come. Next, we will explore the modern-day Venice in more detail, examining how the city is coping with these challenges, what it means to be a Venetian citizen in today's world, and the future prospects for a city built on the waters of the Adriatic Sea. As Venice strides into the future, the city faces an intersection of opportunities and threats that will define its path forward. Though its past and legacy remain etched in the collective consciousness, the challenges of the 21st century demand a rethink of how this city can continue to survive and thrive. Venice is a city built on water, both physically and metaphorically, but like the waters that surround it, the city's future is fluid, ever-changing, and fragile. In this segment, we will delve into the city's adaptation to the modern world. How is Venice addressing sustainability, tourism, climate change, and the preservation of its unique heritage? What strategies are in place to ensure the city's cultural identity and economic future while navigating the complexities of today's global challenges? From the bold environmental projects like the MOSE project to innovative tourism strategies, we will explore how Venice is trying to protect its iconic landmarks and canals, and how it plans to remain a cultural beacon for generations to come. One of the greatest existential threats Venice faces in the 21st century is the ongoing battle against rising sea levels and the environmental degradation of the Venetian lagoon. With climate change accelerating the rise of sea levels, Venice, already a city built on a sinking foundation, is feeling the pressure more than ever. The MOSE project, a controversial but necessary intervention, was conceived to protect Venice from flooding by creating a series of movable barriers at the entrances of the Venetian lagoon. These barriers are designed to be raised during periods of high tide, acqua alta, preventing the waters from flooding the city and damaging its historic buildings. While the project is a necessary step in ensuring the city's survival, it has faced significant challenges, including delays, budget overruns, and concerns over its long-term environmental impact. Critics argue that the MOSE project might not be enough to prevent the more extreme effects of climate change, and there are concerns about how it could affect the fragile ecosystem of the lagoon. Nonetheless, the project represents a vital commitment to preserving Venice for future generations. While there is no perfect solution, MOSE is an essential first step in addressing Venice's vulnerability to rising sea levels and flooding, and serves as a crucial model for cities worldwide dealing with similar challenges. Tourism is a double-edged sword for Venice. On one hand, it brings in billions of euros in revenue, supports thousands of jobs, and allows the city to showcase its rich history, art, and architecture to the world. On the other hand, it places immense pressure on the city's infrastructure, environment, and local communities. As we saw earlier, mass tourism has strained Venice's resources, leading to overcrowding, gentrification, and the displacement of local residents. The local population is shrinking, and many Venetians have been forced to leave the historic center due to high housing costs driven by short-term rentals and tourist demand. The city has implemented several measures to combat these effects, but the key to Venice's future lies in sustainable tourism, a model that encourages visitors to appreciate the city's culture and heritage while minimizing the negative impact on the environment and local way of life. Recent measures, such as the introduction of tourist quotas, entry fees for popular attractions like St. Mark's Square, and limitations on the number of cruise ships entering the lagoon, are part of the city's plan to mitigate the detrimental effects of over-tourism. Venice is also exploring ways to attract tourists during the off-season, distributing the influx of visitors more evenly throughout the year and reducing the pressure on local infrastructure. A growing movement in Venice is the push for eco-tourism, encouraging tourists to explore the city in ways that support local businesses and sustainable practices. For example, there is an increasing focus on slow tourism, where visitors stay longer and explore less visited areas of the city, reducing the strain on the most popular and heavily trafficked sites. Another initiative involves preserving the local community's identity while promoting cultural tourism. Efforts to highlight traditional Venetian crafts, local artisans, and regional specialties provide tourists with the chance to engage with the city's living culture rather than just its historic landmarks. Venice has long faced issues of gentrification, and the modern era is no exception. With soaring demand for vacation homes and luxury rentals, much of Venice's historic real estate has become unaffordable for local residents. The increase in short-term rentals via platforms like Airbnb has made it difficult for Venetians to find housing in the city, forcing many to seek accommodations on the mainland. In response, the local government has introduced policies aimed at addressing housing shortages and affordability. One such policy includes efforts to convert vacant or underused historic buildings back into affordable housing for local residents. The goal is to preserve the cultural heritage of Venice while ensuring that it remains a place where Venetians can continue to live and thrive. The fight against gentrification in Venice is also about preserving the authenticity of the city's neighborhoods. Local groups, such as Venice's Citizens Committee, have advocated for policies that limit the number of tourist accommodations in residential areas and encourage long-term leasing to Venetians. The hope is that, by addressing these issues now, Venice will be able to strike a balance between the needs of the tourism industry and the local community, ensuring that Venice remains a living city, not just a museum for tourists. Venice's cultural heritage is its greatest asset, and its preservation remains at the forefront of the city's priorities. The city's historic buildings, art collections, and architectural gems are symbols of its past glory and continue to attract millions of visitors every year. The restoration and preservation of Venice's artistic treasures are an ongoing challenge. Many of the city's famous artworks, such as the Renaissance frescoes by Titian and Tintoretto in the Gallery dell'Accademia, or the Byzantine mosaics of St. Mark's Basilica, are at risk of deterioration due to environmental factors like humidity, pollution, and the rising sea levels that threaten the foundations of the city itself. Efforts to protect these treasures include the continued restoration of important buildings and works of art, the digitization of collections for future generations, and partnerships with international art institutions. Venice's commitment to its cultural legacy is also reflected in its dedication to maintaining its museums, galleries, and theaters, which continue to be important centers of learning and artistic exchange. Venice Biennale, established in 1895, remains one of the world's most prestigious cultural events, attracting global artists, curators, and art lovers. The city also hosts major film festivals, music performances, and literary events, all of which continue to solidify Venice as a center of artistic innovation. However, the city's cultural preservation efforts are challenged by its need to balance modernization with conservation. The constant pressure of tourism, pollution, and the threat of climate change means that Venice's future depends on sustainable restoration and protective measures that safeguard its architectural and artistic heritage for future generations. Looking ahead, Venice stands at a crossroads. It is a city with an incredibly rich history, one that has influenced the course of European civilization for over 1,000 years. Its art, architecture, and culture are irreplaceable treasures, and the challenge for the modern world is to protect these assets while adapting to the demands of tourism, climate change, and economic growth. The MOSE project offers a solution to the flooding that has plagued the city for centuries, but it is clear that Venice's survival also depends on addressing the pressures of over-tourism and the displacement of local residents. The goal is not just to preserve Venice's buildings, but to ensure that Venetians, the people who have made this city their home for centuries, can continue to live and thrive in their beloved city. Ultimately, the future of Venice lies in its ability to adapt to the modern era while staying true to its roots. By finding a sustainable balance between economic growth, cultural preservation, and environmental stewardship, Venice can continue to be a beacon of art, history, and human ingenuity. The future of Venice is uncertain, but it is not without hope. Through innovative measures, sustainable practices, and a commitment to cultural preservation, Venice can continue to thrive in the 21st century and beyond. It is a city defined not only by its past glory, but also by its resilience and adaptability in the face of modern challenges. Venice's legacy is not just a product of its history, but of the continuous effort to preserve and adapt. As the world changes, Venice must continue to navigate its future with the same ingenuity and determination that has defined it for centuries. As Venice faces the dawn of a new era, the challenges it encounters are multifaceted, woven into the very fabric of the city's identity. The unique charm of Venice, a city built on canals, with centuries of rich history, continues to attract millions of visitors every year. Yet, beneath the allure of St. Mark's Basilica, the Grand Canal, and the Rialto Bridge, Venice is grappling with pressing issues that threaten to erode its cultural, environmental, and economic future. In this segment, we will explore Venice's ongoing struggle to preserve its iconic past while navigating the realities of the modern world. From the delicate preservation of its historical treasures to the evolving challenges posed by the rapid influx of tourists and environmental crises, Venice must chart a careful course to secure its future without sacrificing the elements that make it one of the most beloved cities in the world. As we've explored in earlier segments, Venice's economy is deeply intertwined with tourism. The influx of millions of visitors each year brings in vital revenue, but it also places immense strain on the city's historic infrastructure, natural environment, and local communities. The city's efforts to manage this delicate balance have become ever more critical in light of the growing global demand for unique travel experiences. In recent years, Venetian authorities have introduced a series of measures designed to limit the negative effects of mass tourism. For instance, the introduction of tourist taxes, entry fees to major landmarks like St. Mark's Square, and attempts to regulate tourism quotas have all been steps taken to try and curb the impact of overcrowding. However, these efforts have met with mixed results. While these measures are important, the tourism issue is complex. The scale of tourism today is unprecedented, and simply trying to limit the number of visitors or raise fees may not be enough to solve the deeper, systemic issues at play. As Venice faces the realities of being a top global tourist destination, the city must find ways to embrace sustainable tourism, one that supports its economy without overwhelming its resources. Sustainable tourism has become a priority. Venice's tourism strategy now includes eco-friendly initiatives, like encouraging tourists to explore the city in ways that benefit local businesses and reduce environmental impact. Through promoting slow tourism, the goal is to encourage visitors to experience the city's hidden gems, outside of the crowded tourist hubs, and to engage more deeply with the local culture. Additionally, Venice's rich cultural heritage, which attracts tourists, is being preserved through more sustainable methods. The city's government has been working closely with cultural organizations to ensure that the heritage of Venice is protected while still welcoming visitors. The challenge lies in ensuring that Venice remains a living city, not just a preserved museum for tourists, but a vibrant community for both locals and visitors alike. The environmental challenges Venice faces are perhaps the most immediate and urgent. The Venetian lagoon, once a vibrant ecosystem, is now under threat from multiple sources: rising sea levels, increased flooding, pollution, and the sinking of the city itself. These combined forces endanger Venice's infrastructure, heritage, and way of life. One of the city's most pressing environmental challenges is the issue of flooding. Venice has always been subject to periodic flooding, or acqua alta, due to its unique location within the lagoon. However, in recent decades, these flooding events have grown more frequent and severe, threatening not only the city's landmarks but also its residents and businesses. The MOSE project is one of the most ambitious responses to this crisis. This large-scale engineering project involves the construction of movable barriers that can be raised to protect the city during high tides. The aim is to prevent storm surges and flooding from damaging the city's infrastructure, including its iconic buildings, canals, and bridges. Though the project has faced numerous setbacks and criticisms, it remains an essential part of Venice's plan to safeguard its future. Yet, the MOSE project is not a perfect solution. Critics argue that it could have unintended environmental consequences for the Venetian lagoon, disrupting its delicate ecosystem. Additionally, experts suggest that the MOSE barriers may not be sufficient to protect Venice in the long term as the climate crisis continues to accelerate. Rising sea levels could make Venice more vulnerable to flooding, and the sinking of the city, combined with a projected increase in storm frequency, may result in an increasingly precarious future for Venice. In the face of these growing challenges, sustainable development is crucial. Venice must adapt to the environmental changes caused by global warming while also preserving its natural surroundings and cultural landmarks. This will require innovative approaches to urban planning, construction, and environmental protection, one that takes into account the complex relationship between the city and the lagoon. Venice's cultural heritage is one of its greatest assets, yet it is also one of its most vulnerable elements. From Renaissance frescoes to the world-famous Venetian glass, the city is home to some of the most priceless works of art and architecture in the world. However, preserving these treasures is a constant battle against time and the elements. Preservation and restoration efforts in Venice have grown significantly in recent years. The Venetian government, along with international organizations like UNESCO, has focused on ensuring that Venice's historic buildings, artworks, and landmarks are protected for future generations. Yet, restoration is a delicate process, and it is not always possible to fully reverse damage done by flooding, pollution, or time. In addition to these ongoing preservation efforts, Venice has also embraced digital technologies as a means of safeguarding its heritage. 3D modeling and virtual reality have made it possible to create digital replicas of the city's iconic structures and artworks. These technologies allow future generations to experience the city's rich cultural legacy, even if the physical structures suffer damage over time. Venice's efforts to preserve its heritage also extend beyond buildings and art. Local cultural traditions, such as Venetian carnival, glassmaking, and mask-making, continue to play an important role in the city's identity and cultural preservation. These traditions attract tourists, but they also serve as a link to the city's past, allowing Venice to maintain its unique character even as it adapts to the modern world. As Venice adapts to the challenges of the 21st century, its local community faces a series of social changes. The influx of tourists has contributed to economic growth but also to social tension. As the local population shrinks and many Venetians are forced to move to the mainland, the very fabric of Venetian society is in danger of unraveling. There is a growing sense of disconnect between the local community and the tourist economy. The city's residents often feel marginalized, unable to afford housing or engage in a meaningful way with the visitors who flock to their city. As a result, Venice has become a city of tourists rather than a city of locals. Venetians have long prided themselves on their rich cultural traditions, their artisan crafts, and their local businesses. The growing economic dependence on tourism threatens to overshadow these long-standing traditions. Local artisans and shopkeepers are increasingly being replaced by chains, and Venice's small businesses are being pushed out by larger corporations and luxury tourism interests. To counteract these trends, there is a movement within Venice to promote local entrepreneurship and community-based initiatives. Venetian residents are banding together to create collectives that encourage sustainable local businesses, artisanal crafts, and the preservation of Venetian culture. These efforts aim to bring back the local flavor of the city, emphasizing authenticity and quality over mass-produced goods. By investing in local communities, Venice can ensure that it remains not only a city for tourists but also a place where Venetians can continue to thrive. This will require a commitment to community engagement, ensuring that the needs of both residents and tourists are balanced in a way that benefits the city as a whole. Venice's future remains uncertain, yet full of possibilities. The city faces immense challenges, environmental threats, economic pressures, and social transformation, but it also has the resilience, creativity, and determination to confront these challenges head-on. As Venice moves forward into the 21st century, its ability to adapt to modern realities will define its future. Through sustainable tourism, environmental restoration, and a commitment to preserving its cultural heritage, Venice has the potential to remain not only one of the most beautiful cities in the world but also a model of resilience in the face of global challenges. The road ahead is not easy, but if Venice can strike the right balance between preservation and progress, it will continue to thrive for centuries to come. Venice stands as a city suspended in time, surrounded by water, its foundations deeply rooted in history. As one of the most iconic cities in the world, it draws millions each year, tourists, artists, and dreamers who seek to connect with its mysterious allure. Yet, beneath the allure of its historic canals and Renaissance treasures, the city faces formidable challenges that threaten its very survival. Venice, once a maritime superpower, now grapples with the pressures of global tourism, climate change, and environmental degradation. In this segment, we will continue our exploration of Venice's future, how the city is adapting to the challenges of the 21st century, how it is preserving its rich heritage while balancing the demands of modern life, and how it might evolve as it confronts these immense obstacles. We'll look at ongoing efforts to safeguard Venice's unique identity and economic stability, and how these solutions could shape the next chapter in the city's long and storied history. Tourism has been a major driving force in Venice's economy for centuries, but it has also become one of the city's greatest challenges. Over 30 million visitors descend on Venice each year, and the tourist economy now contributes to nearly half of Venice's revenue. However, the economic benefits of mass tourism come with significant costs: the overwhelming crowds, environmental damage, and the erosion of local culture. As Venice transitions into the future, finding a way to manage tourism in a sustainable manner has become essential. In this new chapter of the city's history, sustainable tourism is no longer a luxury but a necessity. The aim is to create a model where tourism supports the local economy and preserves the city's authenticity, without causing long-term harm. Venice's leadership has taken several steps to address the issue of mass tourism. The introduction of tourism quotas, limiting the number of people who can visit at any given time, was a groundbreaking step. Additionally, the city has rolled out tourist taxes and fees for major attractions, with the goal of reducing the number of short-term visitors and ensuring that those who do come contribute financially to the preservation of the city. The strategy behind these measures is to promote slow tourism, where visitors stay for longer periods, spend more on local goods, and contribute to a sustainable tourism ecosystem. The idea is to draw tourists away from the crowded areas and encourage exploration of less visited neighborhoods and historical sites, spreading the economic benefits across the entire city and lessening the strain on overburdened infrastructure. Furthermore, Venice has made efforts to promote eco-friendly tourism, advocating for the use of public transport, such as water buses, vaporetto, and encouraging tourists to engage with Venice's cultural institutions in an environmentally conscious manner. The goal is to reduce the carbon footprint of tourism while still maintaining the city's appeal to visitors from across the globe. The most immediate and perhaps most severe challenge facing Venice in the 21st century is the looming threat of climate change. The city's geographical location in the Venetian lagoon makes it particularly vulnerable to the impacts of rising sea levels and increased flooding. Venice has been sinking for centuries, but with the accelerating effects of global warming, the situation has become even more urgent. In addition to the rising waters, Venice is experiencing more frequent and severe episodes of acqua alta, high tides, which have inundated key areas such as St. Mark's Square and other vital locations in the city. These flooding events have not only caused significant damage to the historic fabric of Venice but have also forced many residents to relocate, further diminishing the local population. The MOSE project, though controversial and still under construction, is a pivotal part of Venice's efforts to safeguard the city from rising tides. This engineering marvel involves the installation of movable barriers at the entrances to the Venetian lagoon. These barriers can be raised during periods of high tide, protecting the city's historic center and preventing water from entering the city. While the MOSE project has faced delays and opposition, especially due to concerns over costs and its environmental impact, it remains a crucial piece of Venice's long-term survival strategy. However, experts argue that the MOSE project is not a permanent solution. Rising sea levels, driven by climate change, will continue to pose an existential threat to Venice well into the future. Therefore, in addition to large-scale engineering projects, Venice must also consider long-term sustainability strategies. These might include wetland restoration to enhance the lagoon's natural defenses, green infrastructure to absorb excess water, and the creation of new urban planning models that integrate Venice's environmental needs with its growing demand for residential and commercial space. Venice's environmental sustainability depends on how well it can integrate these approaches, while also reducing carbon emissions, improving waste management, and increasing the use of renewable energy sources in the city. Additionally, Venice's heritage buildings must be preserved while accounting for the changing climate, which will require new methods for restoration and conservation in the face of extreme weather conditions. Venice's cultural legacy is the city's most significant asset. The art, architecture, and traditions that define Venice have long been a source of pride and inspiration. The Renaissance paintings of Titian, Tintoretto, and Veronese, the mosaic masterpieces of St. Mark's Basilica, and the Gothic and Byzantine architecture that adorns the city, all are treasures that must be preserved for future generations. But protecting these cultural gems is not without its difficulties. The challenges posed by flooding, pollution, and tourism place significant pressure on the preservation efforts of Venice's most famous landmarks. Restoring and maintaining these priceless works requires enormous financial resources, advanced technology, and a strong commitment from both local authorities and international organizations. To address these concerns, Venetian officials have ramped up efforts to conserve the city's historical buildings, artworks, and archives. Restoration projects are continually underway to repair the damage caused by flooding, humidity, and pollution. Additionally, Venice's art museums and public collections work in collaboration with international partners to ensure that its cultural heritage is digitally archived and preserved for future generations. However, even with these ongoing efforts, preserving Venice's unique cultural identity will be an ongoing challenge. The question remains, how can Venice continue to celebrate its past while evolving into a modern city? The key to answering this lies in finding a balance between historic preservation and the needs of contemporary society. It is about creating a sustainable cultural economy, where Venice's history and artistic significance coexist harmoniously with the demands of the 21st century. Venice's social fabric has undergone dramatic changes in recent decades. Once a thriving community of artisans, merchants, and fishermen, Venice now struggles with the issue of declining population and the increasing displacement of local residents. The pressures of tourism and gentrification have created a divide between the city's local population and the tourist economy. At the same time, social movements and community groups are actively working to ensure that Venice remains a city for Venetians, not just a tourist attraction. These groups advocate for policies that prioritize affordable housing, support local businesses, and protect Venetian traditions. Venice has a long tradition of democratic governance, and its Republican roots have played a significant role in shaping its political culture. The Doge, the elected leader of the Venetian Republic, was once a symbol of Venetian unity, though the role of the Doge has been largely ceremonial in the modern era. Today, Venice's local government continues to function as a model of participatory democracy, where community involvement and civic engagement remain crucial aspects of Venetian life. Looking ahead, Venice will need to continue to innovate in order to address the pressures of the global economy, climate change, and tourism. The city must focus on finding sustainable solutions that preserve its unique identity while also meeting the demands of the modern world. It will take the collective effort of local authorities, residents, businesses, and international partners to ensure that Venice remains a living city, one that continues to thrive for centuries to come. Venice stands as a testament to human creativity, resilience, and the ability to adapt to the challenges of an ever-changing world. Though it faces unprecedented challenges in the 21st century, from the effects of climate change to the pressures of mass tourism, Venice has the opportunity to reinvent itself while holding on to the elements that make it unique. Through sustainable tourism, environmental restoration, and a commitment to cultural preservation, Venice can continue to thrive, embracing its past while adapting to the modern era. The road ahead is not without obstacles, but Venice's enduring spirit, its rich history, and its commitment to innovation will help guide the city toward a brighter, more sustainable future. As Venice moves forward, it will need to continue balancing the needs of its residents with the demands of global tourism, its cultural heritage with modern progress, and its natural environment with the realities of climate change. With the right balance, Venice can continue to stand as one of the world's most beloved and culturally significant cities for generations to come. In the heart of the Venetian lagoon, a city like no other continues to stand against time. Venice is a city built on islands, a city where history and modernity intersect, creating a dynamic tension that has defined its past. Today, the challenges Venice faces are not merely the remnants of old conflicts or the decline of empires, it is the very fabric of its environment and culture that is at risk. As we explore Venice's path forward, we look at the actions the city has taken to not only survive but thrive in the face of climate change, over-tourism, and urban pressures. From its environmental initiatives to cultural preservation efforts, Venice is working toward creating a sustainable future where it can remain a living city, rich in history, while adapting to the demands of the 21st century. Venice's struggles with water are not new, after all, it is a city built on water. However, the pressures Venice faces today are unlike those of any previous generation. The threat of rising sea levels, exacerbated by climate change, is not merely an abstract concern, it is an immediate crisis that threatens to engulf the very city it seeks to preserve. Rising sea levels are a problem that affects coastal cities around the world, but Venice is especially vulnerable due to its unique position in the Venetian lagoon. Historically, the city has been subject to flooding. The famous Acqua Alta has been a part of the city's life for centuries. However, in the 21st century, these floods have become more frequent and more severe. Global warming is accelerating the melting of polar ice, and as the world's oceans rise, Venice finds itself in a precarious position. In the past century alone, the city has sunk by approximately 23 centimeters due to both natural causes and human activity such as the extraction of groundwater. While measures have been taken to slow this process, the city continues to sink at a rate of about 1 millimeter per year. The MOSE project, which aims to build movable barriers to protect the city from rising tides, is a step forward. However, it is only a temporary solution to the larger problem at hand. As sea levels continue to rise and the city continues to sink, Venice must rethink its entire approach to urban planning and environmental sustainability. One of the key strategies for ensuring Venice's survival is the restoration of its natural environment, specifically, the Venetian lagoon. The lagoon is not just a picturesque setting for the city, it is the ecosystem that sustains Venice's way of life. The waterways, salt marshes, and wetlands are crucial for the city's biodiversity and climate resilience. For years, the Venetian lagoon has been subjected to environmental degradation, with the construction of dams, dikes, and other urban infrastructure impacting the balance of the lagoon. Moreover, the city's extensive use of motorboats and cruise ships has led to increased pollution and erosion of the lagoon's delicate ecosystem. In response to these challenges, local authorities have launched several initiatives aimed at restoring the lagoon's health. These efforts include wetland restoration projects, the removal of invasive species, and the creation of protected marine areas. These initiatives aim to preserve and enhance the city's unique environment, ensuring that it remains viable for future generations. One of the most ambitious projects is the Venice Lagoon Restoration Program, which seeks to restore natural habitats that will help buffer Venice from rising tides, improve water quality, and promote sustainable biodiversity. The restoration of salt marshes and other wetlands will increase the lagoon's ability to absorb excess water and provide protection against storm surges and flooding. However, these projects face significant challenges. Despite international efforts to improve the environmental health of the Venetian lagoon, the ongoing effects of climate change present a constantly shifting threat. The future of Venice will depend on its ability to adapt to these environmental pressures while preserving the delicate balance that has made it unique. As Venice grapples with environmental pressures, the city must also consider modern urban needs. Venice's historic center is increasingly unable to accommodate the demands of modern living, with a shrinking population, dilapidated infrastructure, and an aging housing stock. The city faces the difficult task of integrating modernization with its ancient charm. To meet these challenges, Venice is embracing innovative urban planning strategies designed to make the city more resilient and sustainable. These include strategies like the adaptive reuse of historic buildings, green infrastructure, and energy-efficient housing projects. For example, old palaces and industrial buildings are being converted into affordable housing for locals and young professionals, helping to combat the gentrification and displacement caused by the influx of tourists. In addition, the city is investing in modern public transportation solutions that reduce the reliance on polluting boats and promote sustainable modes of transport. For example, electric water taxis and solar-powered ferries are being developed to reduce the city's carbon footprint and improve the quality of life for its residents. Urban planning in Venice must also consider the preservation of the city's iconic skyline. Much of Venice's architectural heritage, its palaces, churches, and bridges, remains largely unchanged since the Renaissance. However, the challenge lies in preserving these structures in the face of rising sea levels, heavy tourism, and increased construction demands. It will require careful integration of contemporary urban design with the city's rich architectural history. As Venice moves into the future, it must also develop a strategy for economic sustainability, a balance between maintaining its role as a tourist hub and fostering local economic resilience. Venice's dependence on tourism has made it increasingly vulnerable to external shocks, such as economic downturns or global pandemics, that reduce travel and affect the local economy. The key to economic sustainability lies in Venice's ability to diversify its economy. Venice has long been known for its art and craftsmanship, and efforts to promote local industries are underway. The city's glass-making tradition on the island of Murano, its lace-making history in Burano, and its Venetian mask-making continue to serve as sources of cultural pride and economic opportunity. Venice is also embracing its role as a hub for arts and culture. The Venice Biennale, one of the world's most prestigious art festivals, continues to attract artists, curators, and visitors from around the globe. The Venice Film Festival also remains a key cultural event, and Venice is slowly re-establishing itself as an international center for contemporary art and performing arts. In addition to cultural industries, Venice is also looking to technology and sustainable businesses to diversify its economy. The city is encouraging the growth of green industries, such as renewable energy and environmentally conscious tourism. Venice is also focusing on high-tech research, especially in the fields of marine biology and climate change. By aligning its economic future with its environmental sustainability efforts, Venice aims to ensure long-term prosperity for its residents and visitors. One of the most pressing issues for Venice is the changing demographics of the city. As local Venetians continue to leave the city due to rising living costs, the displacement of residents has had a profound impact on the city's cultural landscape. The population of Venice has been steadily decreasing for decades, with the historic center now home to a fraction of the people who once called it home. The challenge now is to ensure that Venice remains a living city, where locals can continue to thrive and contribute to its unique cultural fabric. In recent years, there has been a concerted effort to revitalize the local population by creating affordable housing and improving job opportunities for Venetians. Local organizations, in partnership with city authorities, have advocated for policies that make housing affordable, promote local businesses, and bring back Venetian families to the city center. Venice's identity is deeply intertwined with its local community, and ensuring that Venice is not merely a tourist city but also a place for its residents is essential. Cultural programs that engage Venetians in community events, artisan workshops, and traditional festivals help to build community bonds and ensure that Venice remains a lively city, not just a museum for tourists. Venice's future is not without its challenges, but the city's ability to adapt, innovate, and preserve its unique identity is what has allowed it to survive for over 1,000 years. The preservation of its cultural heritage, the management of mass tourism, and the environmental sustainability initiatives will be key to ensuring that Venice continues to thrive in the 21st century. Venice's adaptability, combined with its rich history and cultural significance, will help guide the city toward a sustainable future. By focusing on sustainable tourism, environmental restoration, and economic diversification, Venice can continue to be a global cultural icon, while maintaining its status as a living city with a vibrant local community. The road ahead is long, and the challenges are many. But Venice's future is bright, and as long as the spirit of Venice endures, the city will continue to stand as a symbol of human resilience, creativity, and cultural pride. Venice, the city of canals, has always been a place where the forces of nature meet the brilliance of human ingenuity. From its foundations on the water, to the magnificent architecture that rises from it, Venice is a testament to resilience and adaptation. Today, the city faces perhaps its greatest challenge yet: how to preserve its rich cultural heritage while navigating the complexities of the modern world. In this segment, we will explore how Venice is responding to the environmental and economic challenges it faces, with a focus on the strategies it has implemented for sustainability, preservation, and ensuring the city's long-term viability. As the global community begins to recognize the fragility of this unique city, Venice's future will depend on its ability to adapt while retaining the very essence that makes it so extraordinary. Venice's relationship with its waterways has always been central to its identity. For centuries, its canals served as the arteries of trade and commerce, connecting the city to the Mediterranean and beyond. Today, Venice's waterways represent both the city's greatest strength and its greatest vulnerability. As we've discussed in previous segments, climate change is driving rising sea levels, threatening to submerge low-lying cities like Venice. The MOSE project, while ambitious, offers only a temporary solution. The challenge lies in addressing the long-term viability of Venice's canals, which are not just symbols of the city's history, but also essential for its sustainability. Restoration efforts are being made to revitalize the canal network in a way that balances both the historical significance and the need to create a sustainable, working system. This involves updating Venice's water transportation methods to be eco-friendly and innovative. Electric water buses and solar-powered boats are now being tested in the canals, reducing the carbon footprint of one of the world's most iconic transport systems. These projects represent a shift towards a greener future for Venice, where sustainability and heritage can coexist. The city is also looking at cleaning up the canals and improving the water quality. As Venice has long struggled with the buildup of sediments and pollutants in its canals, ongoing efforts to improve water filtration systems are essential to ensure the canals remain navigable while reducing the environmental impact. The larger question remains: how can the city ensure that its waterways remain a sustainable and integral part of its identity? The future of Venice's waterways will depend on innovative planning, technological advances, and a commitment to preserving the unique balance between human habitation and nature. Venice's historic buildings are the cornerstone of the city's charm. The city boasts some of the world's most iconic landmarks, from the Grand Doge's Palace to the ornate St. Mark's Basilica. Venice's architecture reflects its multicultural heritage and rich history. But these buildings, and the historic districts that surround them, are not immune to the pressures of modern life. The challenge of preserving Venice's architectural heritage lies in balancing the demands of modernization with the need for conservation. Restoration is a delicate process, and the city has been fortunate to attract international support and expertise to aid in the preservation of its cultural treasures. Organizations like UNESCO have long recognized Venice's status as a World Heritage Site, and this recognition has helped guide the efforts to maintain the city's landmarks. However, while Venice's iconic landmarks are relatively well preserved, the situation is more dire when it comes to residential buildings and smaller structures. Decay and erosion are constant threats, and the rising tide of tourism has made maintaining these buildings more difficult. For instance, public funding for restoration projects has dwindled, and while international grants provide some assistance, the demand far exceeds the available resources. In response, Venice is rethinking urban development in a way that respects its historical significance while integrating modern amenities. One innovative solution is the adaptive reuse of historic buildings. By converting old warehouses and abandoned palaces into affordable housing, art studios, and local businesses, the city can preserve its architectural fabric while providing functional spaces for its residents. As the city's future depends on its ability to integrate the old with the new, it will require a careful and thoughtful approach. Sustainable development practices are being employed in the restoration of Venice's historic districts, such as the use of energy-efficient materials, green roofs, and solar-powered systems. These techniques offer a glimpse into the future of Venetian architecture, a future that balances modern needs with the preservation of a centuries-old city. As Venice's tourist industry continues to be a driving force in its economy, it has also become a double-edged sword. Tourism in Venice is now more than just a significant source of income, it is an ever-present pressure on the city's local culture, environment, and infrastructure. Tourism affects every aspect of Venetian life, from the crowded streets around Piazza San Marco to the flooded canals during peak tourist season. For many Venetians, the overwhelming influx of tourists has led to the displacement of the local population and the erosion of the authentic Venetian experience. In some cases, this has resulted in the gentrification of neighborhoods, where local businesses are replaced with high-end shops and luxury accommodations catering to the tourism industry. The city has taken steps to address these issues. Measures like tourist quotas, tourist taxes, and restrictions on the size and number of cruise ships allowed to dock in the Venetian lagoon have been introduced to reduce the impact of mass tourism. These efforts are aimed at ensuring that tourism benefits the local community, instead of displacing it. While these initiatives are important, the challenge remains: how can Venice ensure that tourism continues to thrive without sacrificing the identity of the city? It is about finding a balance between maintaining Venice's status as a global cultural destination and preserving the authenticity of life in Venice for its residents. One way Venice is adapting to this challenge is by promoting alternative forms of tourism, such as cultural tourism, ecotourism, and slow tourism. These strategies encourage tourists to engage more deeply with the local culture, explore less visited neighborhoods, and spend longer periods in the city. By doing so, tourists can contribute to the local economy without overwhelming the city's infrastructure. Venice's local communities are facing a crisis of displacement as property prices rise and the availability of affordable housing diminishes. In the past few decades, many Venetians have been forced to move out of the city center, as the real estate market has become increasingly driven by the demands of tourism. The increasing demand for luxury rentals and short-term vacation accommodations has resulted in a decrease in permanent residents, leading to the hollowing out of local neighborhoods. This social shift is impacting not only the economy but also the cultural fabric of the city. Venice's local artisans, small businesses, and traditional family-run shops are being replaced by chain stores, luxury boutiques, and tourist-focused enterprises. These changes threaten to erase the very identity of Venice, turning the city from a vibrant, living space into a mere museum for visitors. To combat these changes, local organizations are advocating for policies that prioritize affordable housing for residents, protect small businesses, and promote local craftsmanship. Initiatives such as Venice's local development plans aim to revitalize the city's neighborhoods while keeping the local culture intact. Venice's resilience lies in the ability of its local community to adapt to these pressures while preserving the essence of Venetian life. By fostering a sense of pride in the city's local traditions, Venetians can continue to thrive while ensuring that their city remains a beacon of cultural heritage in the modern world. As Venice moves into the future, it must confront a series of challenges that are both environmental and social. The city's fragile ecosystem, its vulnerable heritage, and the pressures of modernization require careful, forward-thinking solutions. Venice is at a crossroads, and its future will depend on its ability to balance the preservation of its rich history with the demands of modernity. Through sustainable tourism, environmental restoration, and innovative urban planning, Venice can continue to preserve its unique identity and heritage while adapting to the challenges of the 21st century. The city's resilience lies in the strength of its people, the enduring power of its cultural heritage, and the innovations that continue to shape its future. The path ahead is difficult, but with collaboration, commitment, and creativity, Venice can remain a beacon of art, culture, and sustainability for generations to come. Venice, the city that rose from the marshes of the Venetian lagoon, has long been a symbol of cultural and historical significance. A city that once dominated the seas and commanded respect as a maritime power, Venice is now facing its greatest challenge yet, the balance between preserving its past and adapting to an ever-changing, globalized world. This segment will examine the future trajectory of Venice as it navigates the difficult terrain of environmental change, economic pressures, and the demands of modern society. From the effects of climate change on its sinking foundations to the pressures of tourism and the challenges of preserving local culture, Venice stands at a crucial crossroads. How can the city continue to be a thriving cultural hub and living community while safeguarding its unique history and legacy? As we explore Venice's future, we will also examine the innovative solutions the city is implementing to adapt and thrive in the 21st century. From sustainability efforts to the role of technology in conservation, Venice's survival depends on its ability to embrace the future while holding firm to the qualities that have made it one of the world's most revered cities. The most pressing concern for Venice today is the ongoing impact of climate change. The rising sea levels and the sinking of the city are two environmental threats that have grown significantly more urgent in recent years. As we discussed earlier, the city's unique position in the Venetian lagoon has made it particularly vulnerable to global warming and the increased frequency of flooding. The MOSE project remains a key piece of the puzzle in Venice's fight against rising waters. The movable barriers designed to prevent storm surges and flooding are a critical response to the growing threat. However, despite the potential effectiveness of the MOSE barriers, the project is not without its challenges. Delays, high costs, and concerns over the environmental impact of the barriers have sparked debates about whether this approach will ultimately provide a long-term solution. In addition to the MOSE project, Venice has begun implementing other measures aimed at sustaining the city's foundation and preserving its environment. These measures include restructuring the city's drainage systems, improving wetland preservation, and investing in green infrastructure, all designed to enhance the city's ability to withstand rising tides and extreme weather. While the MOSE barriers are a start, Venice will need to innovate further to address the growing environmental threats. Future strategies may include enhanced coastal defense systems, the use of sustainable construction methods to bolster the foundations of historic buildings, and improved citywide water management systems. Venice's future depends on how well it can adapt to the challenges posed by climate change and continue to be a model for other cities facing similar threats. Its ability to sustain its environment while preserving its architectural legacy will be a defining factor in its survival. In addition to environmental threats, tourism remains one of Venice's most complex challenges. The city's economic reliance on tourism is undeniable, but the pressure of millions of visitors each year has begun to have a detrimental effect on its local communities, environment, and cultural integrity. In response to the overwhelming impact of mass tourism, the Venetian government has begun exploring sustainable tourism strategies. Tourist quotas, entry fees, and restrictions on cruise ships have been implemented to try and mitigate the damage caused by the constant stream of visitors. However, the question remains, how can Venice continue to thrive as a global tourist destination without sacrificing the authenticity of its local communities and heritage? The answer lies in responsible tourism. Venice must embrace a model of ecotourism that not only preserves the environment but also promotes local businesses and engages tourists in meaningful cultural experiences. Efforts to encourage off-season tourism, rather than concentrating visitors during peak months, have begun to show promising results. This approach will not only reduce the strain on the city's infrastructure but also ensure that tourism revenue is more evenly distributed throughout the year. Another critical step in Venice's tourism strategy is the promotion of local, artisanal products and the protection of traditional Venetian crafts. Venetian glassmaking, mask-making, and lace-making are iconic elements of the city's identity, and they must be protected from the onslaught of tourist kitsch. By encouraging tourists to engage with authentic local artisans and participate in cultural experiences, Venice can create a more sustainable and authentic tourist economy. Finally, tourism management needs to focus on spreading visitors throughout the city and the Venetian islands. Many tourists only visit the central areas of Venice, leading to overcrowding and environmental degradation. By promoting visits to lesser-known areas, Venice can alleviate some of the pressure on St. Mark's Square and other heavily trafficked sites. This approach will not only reduce overcrowding but also help revitalize Venetian neighborhoods that have long been neglected. While Venice has become a symbol of cultural heritage, the task of preserving its unique identity is more challenging than ever. The city's architectural treasures, artworks, and historical districts are among the most important in the world, but they are also vulnerable to erosion, pollution, and the wear and tear of time. The preservation of Venice's cultural heritage is an ongoing battle. Over the years, various initiatives have been launched to restore and maintain the city's most significant landmarks. Projects like the restoration of St. Mark's Basilica, the Doge's Palace, and the Gallery dell'Accademia have helped ensure that these cultural treasures will endure for generations. However, the task is far from finished, and the continuous deterioration of Venice's buildings requires constant funding, expertise, and care. One of the most pressing challenges in cultural preservation is balancing historic restoration with the demands of modern development. As the city adapts to the 21st century, there is a growing need for sustainable modernization. Venice must continue to protect its architectural heritage, while also finding innovative solutions to meet the needs of its residents and the demands of a modern economy. This includes the need for affordable housing, new infrastructure, and the preservation of local businesses. New technologies and methodologies are also playing a significant role in Venice's restoration efforts. The use of 3D scanning and digital archiving allows for the precise documentation of Venetian buildings, ensuring that the city's architectural legacy can be preserved even in the event of future disasters or damage. Additionally, advanced restoration techniques, such as laser cleaning and environmentally friendly paints, are helping to preserve the authenticity of Venice's historic structures. In the face of mounting challenges, technology offers potential solutions for Venice's long-term sustainability. The city's unique geography, historic significance, and ongoing environmental issues make it a prime candidate for innovative technological solutions. The use of technology in Venice's restoration efforts is already proving invaluable. 3D modeling and virtual reality allow architects and conservationists to study and replicate Venice's historic structures with a level of precision that was once impossible. These digital tools not only assist with the preservation of existing buildings but also provide a blueprint for future restoration projects, ensuring that future generations can appreciate the city's timeless beauty. In addition, smart city technologies are beginning to take root in Venice. Sustainable energy solutions, such as solar panels, green roofs, and energy-efficient lighting, are being integrated into the city's buildings. These innovations are crucial in reducing Venice's carbon footprint and ensuring that the city remains environmentally sustainable while maintaining its heritage. Artificial intelligence is also being used to monitor Venice's canals and structures, detecting early signs of erosion or structural weakness. By incorporating sensors and AI-driven analytics, Venice can respond to potential threats more quickly, preventing costly damage to its historic buildings and canals. The integration of data management systems will also allow Venice to improve its tourism management, offering real-time information about visitor numbers, traffic patterns, and environmental conditions. This data-driven approach will help the city make informed decisions about managing its resources and preserving its unique identity. Venice's future lies in its ability to adapt to the modern world while retaining its timeless allure. The city's cultural legacy, environmental sustainability, and economic stability are intertwined, and it will take a balanced approach to ensure the city's long-term survival. By embracing sustainable tourism, investing in environmental restoration, and leveraging the power of technology, Venice can navigate the challenges of the 21st century. The key to Venice's future is not only in its preservation but also in its ability to innovate and evolve while staying true to the elements that make it one of the world's most beloved cities. As Venice faces the future, it is not simply a city of the past, it is a city reimagined for a new generation. With resilience, creativity, and collaboration, Venice will continue to be a beacon of art, culture, and sustainability for centuries to come. As we conclude this journey through Venice's storied past and its challenging yet promising future, one thing becomes clear: Venice is not just a city, it is a symbol of resilience, an embodiment of human ingenuity in the face of adversity. From its glorious past to the challenges of the 21st century, the story of Venice is far from over. As we've explored, Venice faces daunting challenges: climate change, over-tourism, and the struggle to preserve its cultural heritage. Yet, in the face of these trials, the city continues to adapt, innovate, and find new solutions to ensure its survival and prosperity. Whether through sustainable tourism, environmental preservation, or the integration of cutting-edge technologies, Venice is writing a new chapter in its long and rich history. The road ahead will not be easy, but Venice's unique ability to blend history with modernity, its commitment to preserving its identity, and the determination of its people will guide the city toward a sustainable future. Venice's legacy is not just its canals, palaces, and mosaics, it is the spirit of the city and its ability to adapt while staying true to its roots. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. What part of Venice's journey in this video resonated with you the most? Is there a specific part of the city's history, culture, or future that you found especially intriguing? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective adds so much to our journey through time. Also, where are you watching from today? What time is it in your corner of the world? Venice's story has captured hearts around the globe, and I'd love to know where you're joining from. Drop your location in the comments. I'm always fascinated by how connected we all are, despite the distances between us. And don't forget to like the video if you found this journey insightful, and subscribe to stay updated on more in-depth explorations of history, culture, and the fascinating stories of the world's most iconic places. As Venice continues to rise to the challenges of the modern era, it remains a living monument, not just to its past, but to the ongoing efforts of its people, its community, and the world that continues to watch. It's a city that faces uncertainty but has proven time and again that its spirit will endure. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Venice's future. We've seen that, while the city may be at a crossroads, the journey forward is filled with hope and opportunity. Until next time, let's keep looking forward to the possibilities that lie ahead.